We're talking Fantastic Four today. We saw the movie. We each saw it. We're going to give you our thoughts and maybe some thoughts on what we thought worked in the movie, what maybe didn't work so much in the movie. Maybe we'll even talk about another certain superhero movie that came out recently as well and how they compared, as well as maybe the return of optimism and sincerity in superhero movies as well. So I'm Brett. This is Paul. That's Kennedy. Hey, guys.
Hey, hello. Before we get going, we actually should probably let parents know that although we're going to be saying some pretty nice things, I think, about this movie, there are some issues that parents would need to be aware of before taking their kids to it. So be sure to check out the full review at PluggedIn.com. We also have a video review that you can check out, right after you watch this video, actually.
That's right. So first off, guys, tell me what you thought. What did you think of Fantastic Four?
Kennedy, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I actually saw it last night.
Okay,
and,
it's fresh.
I was relatively surprised because I think we've been, phase 5 and 4 of Marvel has been kind of disappointing.
Right.
It's been a little like, oh, that was
a lot
okay.
of people would agree with you on that, yeah.
But okay was usually the better response for a lot of those.
Right, the bar was really lowered after
the Eternals.
Endgame.
Why did they make the Eternals? Anyway, go ahead.
These two phases were the kind of phases where I was watching the movies felt more optional to me.
Yeah.
First 3 phases, I was all in on these movies. These ones, I was like, I don't really care about Eternals. I don't care about Love and Thunder after hearing the reviews.
Yeah.
And so when I saw Fantastic Four, I was just like, wow, this is great. This feels like a phase 1 through 3 movie. So I quite enjoyed it.
Yeah. Paul, what about you?
I think that part of that, just to hitch on that, the phase 1 through 3, part of that is because you just didn't have such a huge homework assignment to watch this movie.
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
You could jump right in.
Yep.
You don't need to know anything about what's been going on in the MCU. You can just sort of dive right in, and you have a really self-contained story. And I think that makes it much more satisfying because you're not looking forward to, okay, what are they setting up for next time? Now, we know that the Fantastic Four First Steps is setting up the next stage in the MCU, but it didn't feel that way.
Right.
Well, it's in an entirely different universe.
And I think that's one of the reasons why it worked really well.
Okay.
And I also wanted to get back to something that you said right at the very get-go, that sense of optimism. We have seen, I think, in a lot of respects, the later stages of the MCU have been sort of defined by sort of this complex, murky sense of, you have these shades of gray, you have these complex characters, you have a lot of just backstory that you have to wade through, and that makes it murky.
And a lot of protagonists who sometimes it just kind of feels weird that they want you to root for them.
Well, exactly. I mean, you can even look at it, and I really liked this movie, but Thunderbolts is a great example of that, right? Because they started off as these bad guys, and they become good, and there's some interesting comparisons we can make with those two movies too. But with Fantastic Four, you're looking at heroes that really embrace the hero-ness. That they represent, right? They are, people love them. They try to do the right things. You know that they floss every single night. They really sort of embody that sense of heroic aspirationalism that I think we would like to see.
Yeah, that's what I took away from this movie as well, was kind of the aspirational nature. And then again, touching on Superman a little bit, that was also a very aspirational film in terms of its heroes, right?
Do you hear that, Mr. Hoos?
So Fantastic Four really leans into kind of the family element too, right? I mean, Fantastic Four is called Marvel's first family, right? That is an important part of their story. And I really think they did a great job just connecting all of the characters, giving each character some time to shine, a job to do, and how they interacted with each other was really strong as well. But that family element was super cool to see.
Which I think was why it worked so well that they set it 4 years after their origin story.
Right.
Because you already know the characters and you're introduced to them, and you don't have to go through the whole like, oh, Ben Grimm feels so weird because he's made of stone now.
He's dealing with all of that kind of a thing.
They've kind of worked past that already, and so now they can actually focus on this family aspect, and they can focus on how this new baby's going to switch up the narrative. By the way, is like one of the most powerful Marvel characters of all time.
Right. So the movie actually opens with Reed Richards and Sue Storm finding out they're pregnant, they're going to have a baby. And the baby does factor in very heavily to the story as well.
Yeah. And I agree. I think that family element, this movie was really all about family, right? And in some ways, that's really gratifying to us at Plugged In because it emphasized how important family can be. You know, there's a moment where Sue Storm talks about how family is about connecting to something bigger than what you are. And when you're facing a huge villain, you know, literally huge villain,
Right, Galactus.
you need to have be attached to something bigger than yourself. And I love the themes of that. It also does make a nice juxtaposition to the Thunderbolts. I'll go back to Thunderbolts because they also sort of present themselves as a family, but I would argue that they are a much less perfect family. They have a lot of issues that they're working through, but they find this connection in spite of all of those. Fantastic Four, it almost feels like a father knows best type of family, Leave It to Beaver type of family. Where everybody, and I mean that in the very best way, right? Because that has become sort of a weird little trope, but I think it's necessary to have sort of that optimism, that sense of idealism when it comes to a family sometimes.
I think it's so funny that that has become kind of the refreshing thing to take from superhero movies now. When a lot of comic books, you know, you think of like the golden age, the silver age of comic books, optimism and, you know, doing the right thing and just the tried and true heroism was kind of like the standard for most characters. And certainly, I think this movie leans into that element. It's set in this alternate universe, like Kenny was saying, this retro futuristic 1960s time period,
loved,
which is great.
And the style of the movie
stylistically,
is just so cool.
It really expanded upon what they've been doing in the Marvel Cinematic Universe recently in a way that made it feel very fresh. But leaning into that, leaning into the heroism, the public loves them, and
alternate universe.
It is an alternate universe, but it was very cool, and I enjoyed that. It's just funny to see that the optimism and the sincerity piece is that's kind of the turn here,
right?
After some maybe more dour, gritty, realistic string of superhero movies. So yeah.
Let me go back to Superman, which we've had a nice,
I want to talk about Superman
conversation because I think that echoes one of my favorite lines from Superman, where he's talking with Lois Lane, and Lois is making fun of his love for this really pop punk group that is not punk at all.
Right.
But then she goes on to talk a little bit about how wonderful it is that Superman really thinks the best of everybody who he meets.
Yep.
That genuine kindness, that niceness, which has become almost a dirty word in our society, that idealism that Superman represents. And Superman says, maybe that's the real punk rock. And I liked that because in our very cynical society, that idealism can be very countercultural.
Yeah,
and
it's going against the grain.
So.
Yep,
but I think it's what viewers often really like. I mean, you look at someone like Spider-Man. Spider-Man goes through all of these extremely tragic situations, but every single time he goes through it, he still powers through, and he still continues to fight, and he still continues to cling to the greater good.
Yeah.
And he might have those moments, you know, where he dons the Venom suit or something, but like he always eventually returns to that ideal.
Yeah.
And I think that's why Fantastic Four worked in much of the same ways, because they were facing a very horrific, tragic situation. And even still, they're like, no, we're not going to cave to your demands. We're going to figure out a way to make this work for the better.
Absolutely. Well, so let me ask this just straight up. Because, you know, Fantastic Four and Superman, the Marvel versus DC, these two were kind of rivals in the summer blockbuster season.
Right.
Both have done, it's early for Fantastic Four, but both have done very well at the box office so far. What do you think is better? Which one do you think is better?
It's a great question. As far as a movie goes, I'd give the edge to Fantastic Four.
Okay.
I think the acting is really strong. The story is very resonant. I think Superman had a few missteps here and there. And Fantastic Four
Had a few first steps.
a few first steps. And I think that it worked just so well as just that really tight standalone movie. And I just can't get enough of that 1960s style.
What about you, Kennedy?
Yeah, I think that I'd also give it to Fantastic Four. But honestly, if I'm being completely honest, it's mainly because, one, I wanted a good Fantastic Four movie, and I thought this one was pretty good.
Yeah.
Number two, as much as I think Superman's a great hero, a great character, I always find it harder to connect with the ones who have that very small weakness. Whether that's Superman or Captain Marvel or any of the what some might call the overpowered heroes.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I think Superman's a great character, but it's just harder for me, I think, to get into those kind of movies because I'm like, well, you throw him through a building, he's fine,
That's actually a super interesting point because I'd like to go back to that. We do have with the Fantastic Four, they clearly have some pretty significant powers, but they are not overpowered. They feel a little bit more grounded in a way.
No,
And
ironically, I thought that Mr. Fantastic, he was the least used in terms of his powers.
His powers.
well, and here's the thing.
His brain was the most used.
Well, and that is a really important factor why I think Fantastic Four worked. Their superpowers were in some ways an afterthought to who they were as people. The other thing that I think really worked when you're talking about an overpowered superhero, we are dealing with a really overpowered super villain.
Two of them.
Yeah, and I think that when you have that concentrated villainy, if you will, that makes. I think that superhero movies tend to live and die by how good the villain is.
I agree.
Fantastic Four has a really, really good villain.
I think I would argue Superman does too, right? But it's a different dynamic, right? Because Superman has Lex Luthor. Lex Luthor is the guy who is using his brain for diabolical
he's
purposes.
kind of an underdog, right?
Right? He's kind of an underdog too. One thing I think the Superman movie did well, Kennedy, was they actually started off with Superman getting beat in a fight too.
Yeah.
And I think that was to add some of the relatability there. But to your point, Paul, yeah, Galactus is super, super powerful. Silver Surfer is more powerful individually than any of the one members of the Fantastic Four too. So it's definitely they are stacked up against something that definitely puts them in that underdog position, which makes it easy for them to root for. I was just going to say, I would give this to Fantastic Four as well. And I was surprised that I liked that better because
you came back and we were kind of raving about it.
I was kind of raving about it. I do like Superman better as a character. I'm just more interested in Superman than Fantastic Four. But man, after I saw Fantastic Four, I was just like, wow, that was just super charming, super refreshing. Like the story was great. It was fun. Man, I was really pleasantly surprised. It actually made me think back to the film that kicked off the MCU, Iron Man, in some ways. Different movies. But
very different vibe.
It had a style. It was fun. It just really harkened back to kind of, hey, here's a first film of sorts.
Yeah.
And it really did a great job of connecting with me and I think with the audience as well.
Yeah. And I think that's honestly part of what was a little surprising about Fantastic Four in a good way, is that, like we said earlier, the last few phases of Marvel haven't been the best.
Right.
And so I think there's a sense of going to see Fantastic Four with a sense of like, we'll see how it plays out. Expectations aren't too high.
Right.
I think it's not exactly the case with James Gunn. When James Gunn does a movie, like it's going to be pretty good.
Right. You know that there's a certain floor that you're going to get there for sure.
And so I think that's another factor into why Fantastic Four ended up feeling like a better movie to me, is because going back into Marvel, I'm like, well, we'll see. But with James Gunn, it's like, okay, it's James Gunn. It's going to be pretty good.
So this movie had a few maybe, I guess, murky spiritual elements that we should bring up here and talk about. What were those? Let's talk about those a little bit.
So, I do think that you have Galactus is the main bad guy here.
Yep.
I'm not sure if we've mentioned that. He is a godlike being, and they
Who
reference him.
allegedly predates the universe.
Yeah.
Who allegedly
Cosmic
predates the
powers.
universe. And it's an interesting thing because when you look at sort of the history of the Fantastic Four, Jack Kirby has said that when he created Galactus and Silver Surfer, he went to the Bible. So those actually have some biblical underpinnings. And when you hear the Silver Surfer announce Galactus's arrival,
Right.
it does sound very biblical. I am heralding his beginning. I am heralding your end.
Yep.
There's these biblical undertones to the whole thing. And it's fascinating to me, just sort of the character of Galactus, because he seems to be exactly what we would probably Augustine would call true evil, in that he destroys everything. He destroys creation. He gobbles up worlds. That's his deal. And we all know from Augustine that evil cannot create anything. It only destroys. So this is sort of the ultimate manifestation of that. And it reminds me of the thing that I really appreciated about this movie is how I think some God-given gifts were used to confront Galactus, right? You've got ingenuity, you've got community, and you've got, most importantly, family. Those would be the lights that are sort of opposing Galactus's darknesses. More than even the super heroic powers that we find in the Fantastic Four, it's those elements, the ingenuity, the community, the family, that really stand in opposition. And I really liked that.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. So what were some things that maybe we didn't like as much in Fantastic Four?
Yeah, I mean, just story-wise, I thought the second half was maybe a little rushed. I thought the climactic battle could have been done a bit better. I think that the Thing was a little underutilized compared to the rest of the characters.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Johnny, I thought was great. I thought they really showed him off in a way that
The
they
Human
have never
Torch.
done it before.
Yeah, Johnny gets a lot of shine. Yeah, he's a really good character in this.
He really is, yeah.
And I will say, I don't want to spoil anything, but there's the big plan, that they do, which involves building some stuff.
To defeat Galactus, the big
Yes.
plan to defeat Galactus.
It involves building some things, and I was laughing so hard that they put all of these things like in the middle of cities and stuff, and I was like, I don't know, I would
Poor
have
planning.
like maybe it's a power thing, but I would have put it in like rural Montana or something.
You know what I thought was funny is Marvel got so much flack for always ending a movie with like sky beams, like the bad guys got a sky beam.
Yeah.
The good guys build sky beams in this one. For a
That's
little
true.
while at least. So, how about
Yes.
you, Paul? What did you not like so much about Fantastic Four?
I thought that the movie overall was really strong. I would agree that Ben Grimm did not get quite as much traction as I would have liked.
They clobbered his time.
They clobbered his time. Very good.
Nicely done.
I'm going to be curious to see what they do with Franklin. The little
Yep.
baby.
That's
time
Reed
goes
Richards
forward.
and Sue Storm's kid. Yep.
And I do think that there was just some interesting elements that you just have to walk through carefully.
Yeah.
As a parent, as a moviegoer, toward the end of the movie, there's some really interesting talking points, but it does get a little bit murky in places, I would say.
Thanks for the conversation, guys. And thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, share, and check out PluggedIn.com.